Okay, so you bought magazines and then you started how to learn how to do the chart. Because I remember when I was a child, I'm sure you had you had a big astrology book, or am I getting confused?
Yeah, I've still got them. I've still got these big books. They're falling apart, actually. Yeah.
I remember the one you had. It was quite easy to read, and didn't Dad buy it for you? It was.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. It was about Taurus.
That was it. Oh, it was just about Taurus. All right.
No, it wasn't just about Taurus. No, because I learned a lot from it. It gave you the rundown of Taurus, and to be honest, I don't really remember that part. The part I remember was the planets in signs, and that fascinated me. For instance, Saturn in Gemini, for example, and I gleaned an awful lot. It was quite a psychology thing. Yeah. For instance, it said for me, because I think it was Saturn in Gemini, it said for me that I was a pessimist, living under the illusion that I was being a realist, and that's very true, actually. So it was a bit psychological as well.
Because I remember reading that book, because I liked reading it. Okay, so you bought these magazines, and then but when did you actually start buying books and kind of really looking into it a lot more in depth?
Funnily enough, in each case, it's when the first part was before I had children, and the second part was when after I'd had children and I became a bit more independent, and I used to go to bookstores like Dixon's was at the time, and I bought loads of books because my job, I was quite well paid, and so I was able to afford numerous astrology books that were in depth. Some were about transits, some were about planets in signs. I've still got those books, and I poured through those, and I gleaned a lot, obviously, about the workings of astrology and the aspects and what it means to have a planet in a certain sign. Okay. And so, as I say, I poured over a lot of books. At that time, I was a student anyway, and so I was kind of reading. I got used to reading many different types of books, whether it's sociology, psychology, or whatever. And that's what I was interested in. I think the psychology of a person's chart. Yeah. And then later on, I got more into looking at the transits and then the progress chart. And so
okay, so but obviously this was all pre-Amazon. So when did you order some of these books directly from America? Because obviously it's a lot easier now to get books, isn't it? Because you've got Amazon, but this is all pre-Amazon.
I can't remember. I may have had to order. They were written by Americans, a few prominent American astrologers, yes. And I can't, but I seem to remember if they weren't in stock, then yes, I ordered them. Yeah. And so I covered most of the books. I also had books that had different angles of astrology. It's difficult for us to remember them all now because, to be honest, I've not read some of them for years.
I know you've got the moon sign one, which I've got progressing.
Yeah, I have.
And you've got the transits. Then you've got the red one. Is that to do with the astrology of love? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. I've used that recently on my website. Yes. About people's Venus and Mars. Yeah.
And then obviously, I remember because I had that book. I gave it back to you. There's that book. It was a yellow book.
Yes, it was.
It had the wheel, and then you could look to see someone's chart. So when did you get that book? When did you get that one where you can actually look at the wheel and kind of plot
that will be? That could have been in the 80s, probably. I know it's falling apart now. So a lot of these books are falling apart. Yeah, it could have been. I learned about the history of astrology as regards when astrology became available to the masses,
right?
Which was John Naylor in 1930 was asked to write a column in a newspaper, and he used sun signs because that was easier for people to identify, and it commercialized astrology and made it available to all. But it was just showing a snapshot of what astrology is. because previous to that, it was only people with money who could see an astrologer and have their charts written up, and moon signs were the predominant planets then.
Okay.
Sun sign, yeah, most people don't know the moon signs unless they ask an astrologer. Now they may be able to look it up on the internet, perhaps.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to look
commercial-
up your chart now, to look online, but obviously
Yeah.
you wouldn't. And I don't know whether you'd be able to find out the transits and things in your progress chart, but you can certainly find out your natal chart anyway.
Yeah, you can get programs that will not programs. You can get
No, I mean
a website that
Yeah.
actually will calculate your natal chart. Yeah, yeah. But transits, of course, are more predictive.
Right. So this is when
yeah,
you can predict when it would be a good time for this to happen, or when it might be a good time to do this or that.
Well, that is called I can't even say it. Electro-astrology, which I have looked at. Don't forget, I did just have a web astrology program.
Well, I was just going to ask you that. So when did you get an astrology program, and when did you actually start producing your own astrology charts?
There again, that must have been in the 80s, or I think it was the late 80s or maybe early 90s. And there's this particular company that I bought quite a bit of software from. And unfortunately, they eventually stopped doing it for whatever reason. Maybe the person got too old, I don't know, or whatever. But anyway, they stopped doing it.
It could be new technology.
It could be, yeah, they stopped doing it. But I was disappointed in a way, because they could have that you could have had a software program that there's horary astrology, which is about someone asks a question like, what has happened to my, jewelry? It's missing. And that is what an astrology would have done centuries ago. That is what would have happened. A king or a pharaoh, because don't forget, astrology goes back thousands of years, and every civilization, whether it's South American, like the Aztecs, or whether it's Hindu Vedic astrology, or whether it's Chinese astrology, or whatever, every civilization has dealt with astrology. And horary astrology is when you ask a question, and electoral astrology is more, when is it a good time for me to do X, Y, and Z?
So how do you do that? So say I asked a question, I'm trying to think, when should I launch something, or when should I go study? How do you look at the astrology chart to be able to answer that question?
Because it's a little bit having a tarot reading in a way. You erect a chart for the time that person asked that question, and you look at that chart and compare it to the person's natal chart. It's quite complex, and it's not something that I've gone into, because it's quite, it's quite a, how shall I say, it's something that you would have to learn, and there are not that many books that teach it. There was some software, as I said, but now that's not available as far as I know. So therefore, what you would look at the house position of the thing that the person was interested in, and look at that as it compares to the natal chart. So it's quite complex, and I can't say that I've ever done it, because it's probably too much like hard work, to be honest.
Okay, so because I was going to ask as well, have you had any formal training, or is all of this self?
No, I'm self-taught. I've just read up on it, and I've got various books by different writers who give different angles on astrology, not just the American ones, but other ones as well. I think it's Liz Green. I think she was very good.
Okay.
Long time since I've read any of these books, to be honest. Yeah. But of course, I've got an ephemeris that I don't know whether I bought it myself or had it bought.
I bought it for you.
But that's second. You bought me the second one.
The second one, at Neil.
The first one I had first one I had was from 1901 to 2000, and then
Yeah.
you bought me the one from 2000 to 2050.
Or is it to 2050?
Goes to 2050, yeah.
Okay.
So I can look at the past of people obviously born before 2000. I can look at their aspects, and then obviously the newer one I can use for transits that are happening at the moment.
But how does somebody create this book? How do they know that, like, what the transits are going to be in the future?
Yeah, well, that's a 60. Yeah, that is something. Yes, I can't say.
I can understand going back in time to be able to look.
Yeah,
but
I
how
agree.
can you predict? Do they just
agree.
plot it? Would the person have to use a program to plot the movement? Do you think?
Good question. I know you can get software. I've had software. In fact, as you know, I changed my computer around, and my software hasn't worked. But yes, you can get software that obviously will do predictions for you. But at the moment, I'm kind of doing that sort of manually.
Yeah.
The only thing is, I can't calculate the rising sign.
Okay.
That's the only thing. So, but
you can do
I
it
found
online
a program on the internet that will do that.
Yeah.
Yes. So I am reliant on people's software because I'm not sufficiently clever mathematically to be able to produce it myself.
Well, I would have thought many people would use software, wouldn't they? Or they'd have to create the software for them.
Yeah.
Because it would be a lot of work if you created your own database, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Okay. So this kind of started when you were a child, and then the astrology started in the 60s. When did you kind of start to get more kind of spiritual, or when did you have like your first spiritual experience? And what happened?
I would say that's when I went to I was advised to go to the spiritualist church by someone who was counselling me, and I wasn't interested. And then a year later, they mentioned it again, and so then I thought I'll give it a try. I went for healing because I obviously felt I needed it at the time, and I started seeing things, and I didn't realise that was not normal. I thought that was what normally happens, and then are you talking about developing into the tarot side of things?
Yeah, but obviously just what kind of got you in the direction of tarot and kind of the spiritual kind of side of your life, I suppose.
I think in my case it's probably because I've gone through quite a bit of upheaval, and I like to think that I was guided and directed in that way, because I'd always had strange feelings about myself when I was younger, and couldn't quite work out whether I was just a little bit crazy or what. I just couldn't understand why I had certain feelings.
It can make you feel a bit crazy, as I've often said to you. You feel like you're going a bit crazy, don't you? But obviously you're not, because I don't think you are.
It wasn't something that I was aware that I was born with, like some people are. It was something that gradually developed over time. Yeah. And so I think I was guided in that direction. And then I was given some tarot cards.
But what about the spiritualist church? What else happened at the spiritualist church, and what kind of then led you to realise that it was a spiritual awakening, I suppose, rather than you going crazy?
Not sure, really. I think it's because the things that I started seeing had more and more deeper meaning. It wasn't just seeing pictures and trying thinking, well, what's this about? I did get to a point, but you see, this is rather strange because one thing I saw was a clearing in a wood, and there was a table in the centre of this clearing, and there were all the different elements of the tarot on this table, and I think there was a man standing there, and I didn't know what it was. It didn't mean anything to me. But then eventually, when I actually got some tarot cards, I realised that it was the picture of the magician with all his different elements of the tarot, you know, such as the rod and the cup and the pentacle and the sword.
Yeah.
But I didn't no idea at the time what I was seeing. So I thought that was rather interesting.
Yeah.
So I was obviously being guided to that.
Yeah.
Even before I even saw a pack of cards.
And then when did you get your first pack of cards?
Well, a friend gave me a pack. So she was obviously meant to be in my life for that very reason, I think. I think certain people are meant to be in your life for a reason.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. And
was this when I was 16 that you...
It would be about 92.
All right, so it was about 16, 17, when you got the cards. Okay. So what happened when you got the cards? How did you learn them?
Again, I started, I'm very good at buying every book that I can lay my hands on. If I'm interested in a subject, I did it when I was doing psychology and etc. I get every book I can lay my hands on. I got every book about the tarot, the particular ones that I was interested in. Do you know, I can't remember the author. One of them was called The Apprentice, and the other one was called The Journeyman.
Yeah.
And in that book, I was advised to meditate on a card that appealed to me, imagine myself going into the card and experiencing what it felt like. And that is when I actually started seeing things connected with the cards.
Okay.
Before, I'd only seen things under healing, but then I got the relationship with the card. And also at the same time, I was given a crystal ball, and I started seeing things with the crystal ball after someone had held it. Okay. And then I started seeing things when I touched people or buildings. I started getting visions that way.
I know you've read my friend's cards, and you know there's a few. Well, one particular reading where you mentioned a situation that was going to happen, and all of it it transpired. It all happened. It all kind of played out the way that you said it would. So it's quite fun, and obviously you read the cards for me quite a lot. When did you start doing them and kind of deciding that it was going to be less of a hobby and it was something that you wanted to do?
I don't quite know.
Like as a career.
I don't know. It's very difficult. I think these things just kind of happen. Yeah. It wasn't a conscious decision. It just I just got into it. At the same time, I was still studying astrology, and I had a computer by then. Yeah. So I was that's when I was doing astrology, a lot of it for my own benefit. Occasionally I did charts for people. Yeah. But then the tarot seemed to kind of take over because people readily probably identified. Well, my first customer actually, she said that she thought that tarot was for, it sounds a bit snobbish, but tarot's for the working class and astrology was for the middle class. That's what she said.
Okay, and where did you find your first customers? Because obviously,
I advertised in the local paper.
Right, because obviously all this...
I don't know. I just decided to advertise in the local paper and see what happened.
Because all this is pre-Instagram, pre-Facebook, everything, isn't it?
No, there's none of that.
Pre-internet, it's all...
No, there wasn't. I don't think there was even an internet, even though I had a computer.
Yeah.
That wasn't prevalent then. Anything like it is now. No.
So I keep looking down because Elle's messing about, just trying to make herself comfortable. Anyway, all right. And have you ever taught tarot or astrology? Is there ever anything you'd like to do?
I haven't thought about it. I think I'm still very into astrology, and I always look at things from an astrological point of view, it's sort of like a religion with me. I mean, I'll analyse people's personalities
Oh yeah, I know.
astrologically.
It's because it's Uranus conjuncts Saturn.
Yeah, I'll look at, of course, you know, I made a prediction
Yes, you
astrologically,
did.
which is something I don't often do.
You know,
11 years ago.
Years ago,
About,
yeah.
11 years ago it is now.
And
About
what was that prediction
2020, but 20, pardon?
And what was that prediction that you made 11 years ago?
Well, I looked at 2020 and I decided it was going to be a landmark year. I honestly didn't really know in which form it would take. The aspects affected this country, although, and at the time, when we got to 2019, I'd already looked at 2019 at the same time and saw that there were the rumblings of unrest, shall we say, in this country. The reason it was this country is because the aspects affected England in particular with the, well, I won't bore you with the, you know, England has a sun sign and a rising sign, and it affected England. Obviously, at the time, I didn't know what it entailed, but then when it came to 2019, I thought that at the time that meant Brexit. Yeah. So I had no idea what form it took. I just knew that the people were not happy about the way the government was dealing with things. And when there was demonstration in the street about Brexit, I thought, oh, well, that's what that was. And then when we got to 2020, I realised it was going to get more intense. I still thought it was political. My mind was that people had enough of the government and were going to not exactly overthrow it, but they were going to be...
like you always said it was going to be a revolution. That's what you said.
Well, I did, yeah, kind of a revolution, that people have had enough, and that the parties that we know established were going to kind of lose their grip, and maybe other smaller parties might come forward to make a coalition. That was what I had in mind, but I definitely saw people waving flags and demonstrating in the street and causing a bit of mayhem. But of course, since then, of course, we've had the Black Lives Matter thing, and which of course hasn't just been in this country.
No, it's been
and then of course, not but least, we've had COVID-19. So and the people are demonstrating about COVID-19. Why should we wear masks, and it's all a hoax and all the rest of it.
So what are the planets that made you think there was going to be this revolution?
Well, there were cardinal planets. Cardinal planets are Aries, Libra, Cancer and Capricorn, and they are quite prevalent at the moment.
And
what Mars is in Aries.
Okay, yeah.
For example, we've got Saturn, Pluto and Jupiter. Oh no, I'm not sure. Is it Jupiter in Cancer? Do you know, I can't remember.
I think Jupiter's in Cancer. I think.
Have I got that right? No, sorry, no, Capricorn. They're in Capricorn. Right. Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto are in Capricorn, which is a square aspect to Mars. So that is when I can't give you the exact dates at the moment because I've not looked it up, but I know that when I looked at the charts as it stood a few days ago, what's the planets in the sky, shall we say, not anybody's particular chart, just the planets as they are. It's going to be a real upheaval, but I can't give a date yet because I've not looked it up.
Well, Mars goes direct. The last day of the last day of Mars retrograde is the day of the US presidential elections.
Yeah. Well, yes. Well, I think we're all dreading that, actually.
Yeah.
I am. Yeah. You see, the thing is, he's a Gemini, and it's possible that, for instance, Aries is quite a compatible sign with Gemini.
Okay.
I'm trying to think what other cardinal planets are relevant.
So what you think it might be? All right. Okay. Quite. Okay.
Well, the cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn.
Okay.
And I have an idea that there is something in Cancer. I'll have to check that out. The relevant one for Trump would be, and what's in, if anything's in Libra. But I'd have to check that.
Okay,
because that would harmonise with him.
Harmonise with his being a Gemini. Okay.
But there again, yeah. Sorry, no, it's okay.
So with your astrology and with the tarot, are you very open about it? Do you talk to people about it? You know, do you tell people that you're an astrologer and a tarot reader?
Not a lot, no. No.
And if not, why not?
Because I just think you get blank looks with a lot of people because they're just, it's okay for people who come to me, obviously they're interested.
Yeah.
But just the general public, if I was going on about astrology and different signs and different planets, they wouldn't have a clue what I was talking about, or they might not even be interested, or they might just think it's a bit weird. And even with the tarot, you see a lot of people, for instance, are being taught that it's something that's negative.
Yeah.
Some people are frightened about it for some
It's interesting when you tell people about it, automatically they go, "Oh, I don't want to pull the death card," and they're scared.
Yeah.
Well, death doesn't mean a literal, figurative death.
No.
It's symbolic, isn't it, of an ending in a new beginning?
It is. It's showing that life is going to change and you're going to go through kind of like a rebirth in a sense.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, death is associated with the sign Scorpio, and Scorpio is is connected with the planet Pluto.
Yeah.
And therefore Pluto is about death and rebirth. It's like the phoenix rising from the ashes. Yeah. So therefore, the death card means that you can kind of begin again or start afresh. Yeah. Now, if the death card was with a negative card, then that would be worrying. But fortunately, I can't think I've ever really experienced that. Yeah. And if I do a reading for somebody, I want them to feel comfortable. And I'm not a person who, some people do tell people bad news, but fortunately, I've not had to do that. So that's something that I would never focus on.
But you have had a reading though, do you remember? You have had a reading from someone, and obviously I won't say what the circumstance was, but something very difficult was going to happen to them. It was involving a court case, and that person wanted to know what the outcome was.
Oh yes.
Do you remember? And it wasn't exactly positive.
No, that was very difficult for me. Very difficult because I could see the look. I did say to that person that things might not necessarily work out as well as you can expect. Yeah. Because it might sound like I'm dodging the issue, but I wasn't confident that it was going to work out for that person. And so I tried to phrase it as tactfully as I could. Yeah.
It's not easy because I know if you get someone asking you a question like, "Am I going to get back with so and so?" and it's not easy.
If they're not going to get back with them, then I will tell them no. Yeah, I will tell them no. And unfortunately, a lot of people cannot accept that.
I know.
And I've had people try to make me turn it around and tell them what they want to know, and I find that quite difficult because it's kind of like bullying me in a way to make them. Yeah, tell them what they want to hear, which is not going to do them any good, you know.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
I think I probably talk about you being an astrologer and a tarot reader more than what you do, to be honest. I think it's probably me who talks about it. So what do you do? What are your spiritual practices then? What do you do?
In what respect? Do you mean kind of like meditation?
Well, yeah, just what's your spiritual practice? What do you do?
I don't quite know how to answer that.
Oh, do you meditate? Do you journal? Do you, anything like that? What is it that you do? What kind of spiritual things do you do to?
Well, I like to have candles burning, which I think, and I like to burn incense. Okay. I think that creates an atmosphere.
Yeah.
I must admit I don't do a lot of meditation, and I should do.
Okay.
I feel that I think maybe as I've done it for many, many years, I feel I can get into a reading pretty quickly, just by focusing on the person, and I can do that even when the person's not present.
Yeah.
So it never ceases to amaze me how you're just talking to someone on the phone, and a few people are a bit skeptical. Oh, is it just as good? Well, yes, I would say yes, it's just as good, because it's nothing to do with time or space. It's to do with the person's
energy,
connection.
Yeah.
The people don't realize that when I connect with them, they're also connecting with me, and so they are partaking in the reading as well.
Of course, you're connecting with somebody's energy, don't you? That's what. Yeah. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter whether it's, and even in an email, people might say, how can you do an email reading? Well, that is why I asked for a person's date of birth. See, so it's astrology again, because that's the only way I know what that person is, what their chart is, and how they would respond to whatever the reading's about.
Yeah.
And so, and I asked them to give me the numbers of the cards. You know, like there's 78 cards in the pack, and I asked them to choose numbers from those 78. And so they are taking part in the reading. Yeah. And so therefore, I've got what I do is I focus on everything, all the information they've given me, thinking about that person, thinking about their chart, and that is how I connect with them. And I even have clairvoyance doing that.
Yeah.
Which, as I say, it never ceases to amaze me. Some things you just can't explain.
No, it's quite amazing, really. Well, it's energy, because we're all energy, aren't we? We're made up of energy. Plants are. Everything's made up of energy, and it's just, of course, connecting in to that energy, isn't it? Well, all right. Well, thank you very much, Mum.
Okay.
And thank you for answering my questions. I will probably FaceTime you after this is finished.
Okay. All right. Bye.